I'm Tim Freundlich. I'm the president of Impact Assets and also a founder and board member of the Hub Bay Area and involved in the Global Hub and SoCap. SoCap is a wild mashup of incredible people in a cross-section around the world, 70 countries, working in finance, in philanthropy, in entrepreneurship and big companies, small companies, nonprofits, for-profits, and the consultants and academics and media who are interested in it. It's really that broad. And what it does is brings people together once or twice or a year, depending on where you're going, and really gives them a moment to celebrate and exchange the best thinking in what is really an explosive movement of social innovation across the country and around the world. But I got into impact investing and social investing about 15 years ago when I joined Calvert and Calvert Foundation doing microfinance, community development investing all over the world, and got into the SoCap and Hub actually a bit by accident. We, when I was on sabbatical, we started something called Good Capital, which was a little venture fund. And after we had invested our little fund that we had raised, we kind of were bored for a moment and we're sitting around, and Kevin Jones, who's really the founding convener of SoCap, he was like, we should have a conference. I don't like going to other people's conferences. So that's, SoCap was literally born out of, I think, boredom and some frustration, and bringing the hub to the United States and really creating physical communities that are popping up in many cities around the country and in 25 cities around the world right now was actually a failed venture investment. It was an investment that we never made, but then we decided to actually start an operating company and start bringing hubs to the United States. So they're sort of accidental. There's fundamentally, we're working on a reframing of what value is. What value, not values, everybody has their own values, but what does value mean? Like how does it cross these what we supposed dichotomies that have been established, with philanthropy and investing, you work and then you give away money later. Like these sort of structures that we've created in our conventional wisdom are being challenged, and I think they're being abetted, and the acceleration is becoming visible and exciting because of a generational sort of progression. You look at these 16 to 32-year-olds, the Millennials, they are wired fundamentally differently. And sometimes I say, we've been pushing boulders up hills I've been doing this for 15 years, and to just watch the acceleration, and when actually the DNA is aligned with what the shift is, suddenly you're chasing boulders down hills. These Millennials do not have the conventional wisdoms that have been falsely dichotomizing the movement and culture over the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years, that this stuff has been kicking around with a cooperative movement. It's the beginnings of social investing, et cetera. So we're going to see a really radical acceleration of adoption based on a completely different set of framing around value, where work starts and stops. When do you start giving? What does it mean to be engaged in sort of a social network? All more perfect information, awareness of civil society, equitability, Occupy. All of that stuff is coming out of just some tectonic shifts. So in some ways, I'm just watching it flourish and realizing that we have to sort of get out of its way a little bit. I think there's a lot of things in the DNA of the Millennials, including maybe a bit of over-entitlement, from what I can see in some cases, and comfort in living in their parents' basements. But yeah, I think it is in the DNA. The sense of doing stuff that matters now. The idea of finding meaning in work and bringing your social circles into what you do every day, and your sharing of information, and what causes you support, and it applies, and your consumption and fair trade and understanding the system of your body and the world, and sort of what you're putting into it and where it's going. I mean, all of this is just much more on the table. I'm not saying that they're a bunch of do-gooder, save the world nicks per se, but there's a much more natural kind of social contract that I think is emerging, and it's very well aligned with the tenets of impact investing and social entrepreneurship, particularly social entrepreneurship. But they go one and the same. I mean, enterprises and capital. Capital is a major input. What do you need for a fantastic company or nonprofit? You need people and money, right? And some ideas. But ideas are cheap. You need people and money, and the people are stepping up big time. You've seen every single MBA program in the country establish some sort of social entrepreneurship or social responsibility curriculum or input or faculty member or chair, et cetera, set of classes. Now we're seeing that all the top undergrad programs are establishing social entrepreneurship centers. I'm on the advisory board of 3 of them. I mean, and so, this is how it happens, folks. 10, 20, 30 years of this, and you wake up and things have shifted. The Hub is where change goes to work every day. I mean, it's convening, it's a work club, it's where it's okay to be crazy and dream about a better world and actually take steps with your money or your time, or, your vocation to make it so. And it's intensely global. So it's the re-establishment of physical community, sort of town square meets Commonwealth Club meets that cafe on the corner, but it's actually where you can build relationships based on trust and affinity. So people go to work there every day, and they also have meetings. And I think the Hub in San Francisco had 300 events last year for 30,000 people who weren't members, plus has over 1,000 members working there, representing 450 nonprofits and for-profits and consultancies. And it's the power of recreating a really vibrant community based on values, and that is part of its appeal. It's also very much aligned with the changing kind of work styles and some of the generational shifts of how the millennials want to work in particular. These more open, vibrant environments, not just going to check into a cubicle with like your same 6 people, some of which would, or don't even show up because they'd rather telecommute anyway. But this is like really a vibrant little ecosystem. And then imagine that in every city in the world. And that all of those intensely local communities are actually wired together, sharing teams, ideas, money, working on projects. We have teams in San Francisco from Milan, found people who want to open hubs in Seattle and Boulder. LA opened last week. There are 10 teams in the United States that will have hubs open between last week and 6 months from now. So there'll be 10, 12, 15 in the United States. There's 25 outside the US already open. There are 50 teams all over the world in 50 different countries opening up hubs right now. So suddenly, again, 100, 200 of these things, every major metro area, kind of both intense value based on a local community of social innovators, all social. There's tech, there's civil society, there's philanthropists, there's all these different kinds, but there's something that binds them together, and that they're bound together all over the world. That's the new Facebook of sort of import. I mean, that's the idea of a real creative and collaborative local community that is that really working for a better world, and it's a piece of infrastructure that will change the world. It's not a question of if, it's just exactly how it rolls out, and because that doesn't exist. We've lost that intense local community in major metro areas, and so this is going to do that. The field needs a lot of ingredients. I mean, the people are working on a number of different aspects. There's a huge amount of sort of popularization and democratization that needs to happen. And at the extreme end, that would be things like Kiva, right? Impact Assets is working specifically to integrate really deep impact investing strategies, things like sustainable agriculture, microfinance, into the big bank and financial and wealth advisory apparatus around the country, so that people can hold them in their brokerage accounts. That's another, sort of popularization angle. Calvert Foundation has done amazing work for 15 years or more, doing really broad-based, sort of retail investment products that allow people to invest in community development and affordable housing. I mean, to me, impact investing is probably as much, if not more, about the engagement with the investor and the creation and redefinition of value, as it is about getting the money into these projects on the ground. And now, obviously, that's really powerful. The story of microfinance and Grameen Bank, the story of the Better World books of the world. People, these great companies that are just really making an impact. It is fantastic, and that's what's exciting. Obviously, as a thesis, but the ability of a broad range of society, each person is the center of a sphere of concern, whether it be their family, whether it be the institution that they are a member of, their church or their synagogue. I mean, whatever it is, they have this sphere. And so every one of those that actually makes this shift to redefining what value means with all of their resources and putting their wealth, their captured assets into this, just as when we begin to actually care about the world around us and volunteer with our extra time. I mean, it's like, how do we activate our total spectrum of resources? Once that's happened enough times, and I don't know if it's 4 million people or 40 million people or 400,000. I mean, we're somewhere more in the 400,000 range right now, probably. We haven't reached a tipping point, but when we get to the point where more often than not, people are coming from that place and that personal experience of having really put thoughtfully most of their, or at least considered putting most of their resources, their assets into some kind of more affirmative place as far as being engaged in the world, then we'll have won, and it'll be done. So that's where SoCap, SoCap is an on-ramp and also a pretty deep practitioner space. It's interesting how it both is a place where neophytes can kind of get up to speed and new investors, but at the same time with the quality, the CEO of the Gates Foundation next to the CEO of the Rockefeller Foundation next to all the premier impact investment fund managers in the world are here. So there's a really interesting mix of folks, but you need this kind of stuff. We need rich media, and we need mostly we need peer champion. I mean, it needs to be viral. People need to experience and then get their friends to do it. That's why people change their behavior. It's because of social capital, and I mean the traditional social capital definition of sort of relationship and reputational capital. Because they're friends, because they've experienced it personally, because they're friends and people whose respect they want to be engaged in. That's why people change their behavior.